On a freezing night in the Baltic Sea, a single ship went down carrying more people than the Titanic and the Lusitania combined. By the most careful estimates, around 9,000 people died in the dark water that night. And thousands of them were children. It remains the deadliest sinking of a single ship in all of human history. And yet you have almost certainly never heard its name. This is the story of the Wilhelm Gustloff and of how the worst disaster in the history of the sea became the one the world chose to forget. The Wilhelm Gustloff was not built for war. Launched in 1937, she was a cruise liner, a gleaming symbol of the Nazi regime, built to carry ordinary German workers on cheap holiday voyages across the northern seas. Every cabin was the same class. There was no first and no second. She was propaganda made of steel. She was named after a Nazi official who had been assassinated abroad, a man the regime had turned into a martyr. It is a name that would later make her all too easy to forget. When the war came, the holidays ended. The Gustloff was painted gray and tied up at the port of Gotenhafen, on the occupied Baltic coast, where she sat for more than 4 years as a floating barracks. Still, silent, and slowly forgotten. And then, in the winter of 1945, the war that Germany had started came home. From the east, the Red Army was advancing. And ahead of it, across the frozen land, a tide of people was running for the sea. What happened on that coast in early 1945 was the largest sea evacuation in history. It had a name: Operation Hannibal. Over a few desperate weeks, more than 1,000 vessels, from great ocean liners down to tiny fishing boats, would carry well over 1 million people west across the Baltic, away from the front. Most of them were civilians. Women. The old. And children, tens of thousands of children. They came to Gotenhafen through a brutal cold, having fled across a frozen landscape with whatever they could carry. And they crowded the docks, desperate to get aboard anything that would float. The Gustloff had been designed to carry around 1,500 passengers. On the 30th of January, as she prepared to sail, the people kept coming. Registered, then unregistered. Handed up over the rails in the final hours, until no one could count them anymore. The official list recorded just over 6,000 souls. The real number was far higher. The most cited estimate is more than 10,000 people aboard, including, by some counts, as many as 5,000 children. We will never know exactly. There were simply too many, and far too little time. She sailed a little after midday, out into a gray and freezing sea. She was meant to have an escort of warships. One by one, they fell away, broken down, or turned back until only a single small torpedo boat remained at her side. On the bridge, there was disagreement. For separate commanders, and no single plan. One wanted to run close to the shore, in the shallows, with every light switched off. The senior captain chose the deep water instead. And then came the decision that would be remembered above all the others. A radio message warned of a convoy coming the other way through the darkness. To avoid a collision, the captain ordered the ship's navigation lights switched on. Red and green, glowing across the black water. For a few minutes, in a sea full of enemies, the Wilhelm Gustloff lit herself up. Outside, the air had fallen to 20 degrees below zero. Ice drifted on the surface. And the water itself was only a few degrees above freezing, cold enough to kill a person in a matter of minutes. Beneath that same dark water was a Soviet submarine, the S-13, commanded by a man named Alexander Marinesko. He had followed the glowing ship for nearly 2 hours. Then he moved in. Not from the open sea, but from the landward side, where no attack was expected. A little after 9 in the evening, he fired. 3 torpedoes struck the Gustloff along her side. The first sealed off the bow. The second struck the quarters where hundreds of young women had been housed. Of the more than 300 there, only 3 would live. The third hit the engine room, and the lights went out. Inside, in the darkness, thousands of people understood at once that the ship was dying. The corridors and stairways jammed with bodies. The ship rolled hard onto her side. Of all her lifeboats, only 9 could be launched. The rest had frozen solid in their davits, iced into place, useless. And those who reached the water found the cold already waiting for them. Most who died that night were not killed by the explosions. They died of the freezing sea, within minutes. And among the worst of what the rescuers would carry with them was this. The smallest children, floating face down, their life jackets too heavy at the wrong end, turning them over in the water. The Wilhelm Gustloff went under in less than an hour. In the freezing dark, a handful of German ships turned back toward the wreckage. Together, they pulled around 1,200 people from the water alive. Everyone else was gone. The most careful estimates placed the dead at around 9,000. Perhaps more. Roughly 6 times the toll of the Titanic. No sinking, before or since, has ever taken so many lives at once. And then, almost at once, the world looked away. The dying Nazi regime had no wish to announce a catastrophe. The Soviet Union had little reason to celebrate the sinking of a ship crowded with refugees and children. And in the shadow of that enormous war, a war of almost unimaginable crimes, begun by Germany itself, a single ship of German civilians simply slipped out of the story. For decades, it felt almost forbidden to mourn any German suffering at all. The ship's Nazi name did not help. The man who sank her was not honored by his own country until 1990, long after his death. And so the deadliest sinking in history became a footnote remembered, when it was remembered at all, in the wrong ways, and by the wrong people. But strip away the politics, and what remains is simply this. On a black and freezing night, thousands of people, most of them women and children, fleeing a war they had not started and could not stop, went down into the Baltic Sea. History could not even count them. The least that we can do is remember that they were there.